All right, gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of BGO's Blind Pig, courtesy of bgobsession.com. There's a lot of light right in my face. We're going to change that. So, anyways, I'm very terrible at introductions. I was thinking about this on my way home today. We've probably done, 5 of these where nobody knows who the hell's talking or who they might be if they've just tuned in. So, I'll run through it real quick. John, known as Boone on the board, hails from North Kakalaki. He's kind of behind enemy lines. Neo or Neophyte, who's Bob, lives in Texas. We've got Mark, who is Ohm on the board. He hails from Northern Virginia, just like myself.
See the ohm on the glass?
That's me. Right. Nice. And Paul, who hails from the Great White North up there in Old Canada. He's our field correspondent and resident hockey expert. It helps us out with football from time to time. So I'm Derek. I'm Silent Threat. So now that the introductions are out of the way, I wanted to float something to you guys before we get started truly into what I think is the game of the year and should be replayed every day on a loop because it actually ended the way we wanted it to for a change. Our offensive line is suspiciously good. And I ask you, I throw this theory out there. Is it good because it got better, or is it good because we don't have inept ability to anticipate a pocket and therefore break a pocket, understand pocket presence? What gives? We were supposed to suck. Yeah, we have a pretty good offensive line.
The short answer is yes. I think it got better, and we have a quarterback that's better in the pocket and has whatever that it factor is, where he starts realizing that things are not going well. I mean, escapability is a thing.
I buy that. I remember, and you guys got tired of hearing it during the preseason, the 3 preseason games and the opener, we couldn't pass block anybody. And we talked about it on the pod, and I kept going saying, if they can't protect any better than that, we're not going to, the quarterback's not going to have a chance. Something changed into week 2, and the pass pro has been as good as we've had it around here in a while. Taylor runs, but he's not running for his life. He's getting a chance to step up in a pocket normal and throw. Answer is, I have no idea what happened. I think the personnel was there. They fixed something. The guys started communicating, and I'm hopeful that they're taking the defense aside and explaining to them that can be done.
I think we,
in terms of the protection, sorry, Paul.
No,
in terms of the protection, I think the two things go hand in hand. We've got a quarterback. We don't have a statue back there like we had for most of last. For most of last year, we had either a clueless statue by design who could run, but was too busy, looking at the deer and the headlights to run. And then we had Alex Smith, who couldn't even stand on one leg very well. So I think having a guy that, not necessarily that he's taking off all the time that in 2021, but I mean, it's a threat and they have to respect that. And he is also, there's some exceptions where he'll hold on to the ball, but he's pretty quick to make the decision, especially on shorter passes. So I think we're not asking them to protect for 4 and 5 seconds at a time. And then the other part of it, I think, that's incredible is our run blocking is pretty damn good. It's not just the protection. I mean, we're opening up holes even on pretty good rushing defenses. We're opening up holes. So they've definitely been, I don't think anyone would have predicted what we've seen this year, especially when you contrast it with the defense, which we thought was going to be our savior in 2021 with our tough schedule.
We weren't going to win any games without a top defense, but we haven't had that. What were you saying?
I think what you also have to factor into the whole situation as well is our offensive line coach. And as you guys mentioned, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, Heinicke has certainly played a role in helping that offensive line look better, but we have to give a shout out to John Matsko as well for the amazing job he's been doing in molding this group. The fact is that we have 3 new guys, I believe, in place at the start of this year on our line. Leno, Cosme, a rookie, And I know we've had Flowers before, but coming into this year, he was another new part. So that's 3/5 of your line that, was transitioned. And all things considered, those guys have been doing quite well. When you think of Samuel Cosme, the first week or two, he looked like he was going to be an utter disaster. It wasn't always pretty. And one of the biggest compliments you can give to an offensive lineman sometimes is just very simply not calling out their name over the course of a game. And we've heard very little in terms of, calling out Cosme for a negative play or Leno for negative play. Things have been quiet. And I think you have to give some credit to Matsko. He did it last year as well. Nobody thought we were going to get a contribution from Wes Schweitzer, and we did. He turned in a pretty solid year. And same thing with Cornelius Lucas. I mean, he was thrown into the fire last year, and I mean, he wasn't amazing, but he held his own for the most part. So there's a lot that factors into it, but big shout out to our offensive line coach, who I think is key.
Didn't you call out Matsko in one of the preseason pods? You called Matsko out in one of the preseason pods. You were the only guy to do it. You're being very humble at the moment, but yeah, you should take a bow, man.
So we need Wes Schweitzer to step up big now, with Brandon out.
Yeah, that's a big hole there.
They were commenting on the broadcast, and I'll give them credit for this, that it's not even so much about Scherf out alone. It's not having his presence next to the rookie to keep him in line and whisper in his ear and look out for him a little bit. So Cosme's going to get some trial by fire here over the next few weeks.
Yeah, would they say Scherf's going to be out 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I heard
I
two.
don't know. I haven't heard a cap on it yet. I know he's out this week at least, and probably the next two. But fortunately, they're all really easy games. We should have no problem.
I did find it intriguing that if you go look on the team site at the depth chart, officially Charles is Scherf's backup. And yet they're moving Schweitzer from the left to the right side to take Scherf's place. Now, Charles is going to be active this weekend, according to Rivera, but he's not.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, honestly, none of us know. Rivera and company might know what they have in Charles, but none of us do, because the guy hasn't played enough for fans to make any kind of I mean, people like, I won't name names, but people that are talking about he's a bust, he's a, you should dump him. I mean, I don't know how we would know that. Obviously the availability at some point is an issue, but I mean, I think
I saw the same tweet you did, John, and I almost responded, and I kept my mouth shut. That it's hard to label someone a bust. It's he doesn't have an F. He has an incomplete grade at this point.
Those guys don't remember the good old days when the injured reserve rules were a little bit more lax, and Gibbs and Beathard used to stash guys there every year. I mean, how many years was Raleigh McKenzie stashed before ultimately getting a starting job, and everybody went, where the hell did this guy come from? And by that point, he was like a third or fourth year pro.
So we did that with Rippon. We restashed Rippon at first.
Exactly. And so, I kind of feel like we don't know what we've gotten in Charles until he either gets cut or he has to play. And I'm fine with that. If the coaches are fine with him being, on the roster and a backup at this point in time, I trust their judgment, and until I see something with my own eyes that makes it go away. So these guys calling guys a bust after 2 years just drive me nuts.
It's pretty
Well,
silly.
it's not even 2 years. It's after 2 snaps.
Right. Yeah.
He had 2 snaps, and he got rolled up on, and in his second snap, and he got carted off, and he missed the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Last year. So I think Charles is going to be some Hall of Famer. I don't know. It's time to put up or shut up, I guess. Now's your chance, buddy. But I'm also not going to sit here and act like it's a foregone conclusion that the guy's going to suck. And we got into a little bit of a conversation, not to segue completely on the board about this. We got to stop as fans, and I'm putting it out there. We got to stop as fans is judging these decision makers and these players based on decision makers and players of the past.
yes.
I think that's fair.
What does Ron Rivera deciding to ultimately, and the whole point of this conversation started with Jalen Smith. And my argument was never Jalen Smith is the answer, but my argument is if Jalen Smith isn't the answer, that doesn't mean he's Albert Hainsworth again.
Yeah.
Because Ron Rivera didn't pick up Albert Hainsworth. Martin Mayhew didn't pick up Albert Hainsworth. Norv Turner didn't pick up Jalen Smith. So how can you compare the two? You know what I mean? So
Well, and we don't have Jalen Smith. We wouldn't be paying for him because his salary is being paid by Dallas. If we weren't paying for him, we weren't going to pay him $100 million. It's a
Right.
completely different conversation. It's kind of message board stuff that has driven me crazy for a long time. That's why
But
I've been doing it.
I guess the point is that if Ron Rivera and company decide that Jalen Smith could be an asset to this team, then let's take that and run with it. If they're wrong, they're wrong. But looking at acting like we've been burnt in the past routinely by these kind of pickups has something to do with this transaction. There's no connection there. You know what I mean? There's all of the factors in this scientific experiment are different. So you can't tell me that the result is a foregone conclusion to be the same.
For what it's worth on Jalen, I played golf with a lifelong Dallas fan this afternoon who knows his team like we know ours. And I said, so what's the deal with Jalen? Do we want him? And he said, I don't know. He's been a solid player, but he hasn't been getting playing time this year. And it's not because he's hurt, not because he's a knucklehead or anything else. He just thinks Jalen wasn't performing enough to beat out guys like Micah Parsons and the other, whoever else they have starting now. He was like, you wouldn't be paying for him. So if you want to take a look, that would make sense. But he's not quite sure why they let him go.
Well, it sounds like we're going to be relieved of concerns because it sounds like Green Bay is working out a deal with him. And I mean, I could have told you guys neither one of those guys were going to come to DC because until we're winning, I know Derek hates it when I talk about this, but until we're winning, we're not going to be a destination of choice because it's Washington. And
I don't hate when you talk about that.
I just think there's a lot, this week there was drama, right? I mean, it's kind of stupid drama. We don't know exactly what the nature of the drama is, but how many other NFL teams are getting raided by the frickin' DEA? But in Washington, that's just another Monday or Friday or whatever. For us, it's like only in Washington is that just a routine thing. So I just think we have a lot of baggage. It's not necessarily fair, despite getting DEA raids. I think that's probably something. They say it's unrelated to the team, not to open up that whole.
No, I think that's part of it. But the other big part of it is we've been a losing franchise for a quarter of a century. You put together 3 or 4 winning seasons and that starts to build on itself too. Players want to get paid, but they also want to go to a winner. We're not that yet.
Well, go ahead, Derek. I know you're going to say what I was going to say. So,
but no, my point, the other factor of this is that it takes 2 to tango. Who said that we even called Jalen Smith and he turned us down to begin with?
That's all true.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Which is, again, why I don't look at, and the whole point of this was, I don't look at the failures of an Albert Hainsworth signing to being the failure of a Jalen Smith signing. Rivera and them could have looked at his film and said, this guy's 4 yards out of, this guy's not an upgrade to what we have now. He's just a repeat of what we're already playing with. So why even bring him in? Why bring in the distraction? Why have to cut somebody? Why break up a unit that might, I don't know.
And I do think Rivera is definitely we got our guys. We're going to ride. What is it? The 53 are my ride and die. That he's got that mentality, and I don't know that that's a bad thing. I think people kind of ridicule it, like how could we not, kind of the Madden mentality. How could we not go get this guy? Well, first of all, I might not want to come here. Second of all, we might not want him. And third of all, maybe we have some loyalty to the guys that actually sweated it out and gutted it out and earned roster spots. And we're not just willing to cut somebody and put them on the street or on the waiver wire just to grab some maybe guy from another team. That's not a bad thing, man. That's the kind of thing that makes players love you and want to play for you.
It does. And I think there's a certain amount of that too. But, having read the local sports guys down here who, live, eat, breathe, and sleep the Cowboys, Smith's best years at Dallas were as a Mike.
Yeah.
Well, we just drafted Jamin Davis, right? Why are we going to go pick up another guy whose best position is a Mike when we're not even getting Davis all the snaps at this point in time? And
We will be now. Bostic
I'd
hurt.
love, well, yeah, he will be now, but
Yep.
I'd love to see a breakdown on percentage of plays. And I understand that we're lining up in the personnel package that fits with what the opposing offense is giving us. But I would love to see a breakdown on how often we line up in a 4-2-5 as opposed to a 4-3-4, right? I don't remember seeing three linebackers on the field much on Sunday. Admittedly, I didn't get to see every single snap. I was stuck watching highlights just like last week. But it just feels like we're playing with 5 DBs and 2 linebackers about 80% of the time. So do we need that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we needed the guy out of New England a whole lot more than we needed another linebacker. I think we needed the cornerback help a whole lot more. That kind of surprised me. I might have been willing to throw a 6th round draft pick at that.
Maybe we did.
Maybe.
They said there was interest. Kime said that there was interest, but who knows what that means.
Especially when you just put a guy on IR. So, I mean, that really kind of opens up that slot. You're not dumping a guy to bring the guy in necessarily, right?
Yeah, you think he's kind of a plug and play. It's a kind of a one for a one.
Yeah.
So, anyways, now that we've gotten past that, and I'm just watched Terry McLaurin's fantastic catch on yet another YOLO ball from our boy Heinicke, and I can't really call it a YOLO ball because there's more circumstance than that, but it was kind of a punt into the end zone that McLaurin made a play on.
Yeah,
Washington finds a way again to escape a game that we all thought that they should have dominated.
Last year,
or
that
at least
plays a sack, Derek.
What?
Any other quarterback on the roster that plays a sack.
I know, and any quarterback we've had for the last
Since
20
RG3.
years.
Now, RG3 might have gotten out of that.
I don't know. RG3 didn't have that pocket wiggle. He had
No, he
frontline
didn't have
speed.
pocket presence, but he was a superior athlete even to Heinicke. That's the only reason I say that. He didn't have pocket presence. So it's very likely he loses it too. But yeah.
Well, I can live with the YOLO balls as long as he does that 5th read, cross the field, pass to McKissick that nobody saw coming for the touchdown that probably sealed the game for us. So
That meant that Hopkins didn't have
those two plays. That tells you everything you know about Heinicke, man. There's going to be like close your eye, cover your eyes and pray balls, and then there's going to be those balls where he just makes something out of nothing. And
What did we talk about before the season? This was going to be what Ryan Fitzpatrick gave us, right? He was going to throw 2 picks, but he was also going to make plays. We're getting that from a much younger guy who can run around. Am I the only one on the Terry catch that we're talking about who thought he was getting held at the back of the end zone before he broke away?
100%.
I was looking for a flag on that play, and I was kind of mad that I didn't see one.
He was totally getting held. Oh my gosh, he got mugged.
If that's us, it's a call, right? We get called for that same play. It makes me crazy.
they asked Heinicke if they kind of called him out on, you just shucked that ball up and got lucky. And he said, I get what you're saying. He goes, that might be one on film. I'm kind of like, yikes, why did I make that decision? He said, but on the other hand, he's like, Terry basically says, man, if you don't be afraid to put it up there and I'll go get it. So I think part of that is knowing your receiver and part of it's chucking it.
That's fair. If that ball gets tipped and picked, however, we don't feel the same about it. Then it's not a YOLO ball. Yay, way to go, Taylor. That's what the hell are you thinking, right? I mean, I know I am, and I'm not going to speak for you guys. I would rather not see him throw that pass. I'm trying to remember the down and distance situation, right?
I'm looking at it right now. It's 1st and 10.
Yeah.
We're at their 30, or no, they're 27.
And all we need is a field goal at that point to take the lead. It wasn't.
Oh, is that all? That's all we needed was a field goal.
And that's fair.
No, that's not true. We were down 30 to 22.
As long as we don't need an extra point, I'm okay.
No, hold on.
No.
We were down 8. We were down
the
8.
First touchdown.
Oh, that's where we were still down 8. Okay.
Yeah, McKissick's touchdown was the go-ahead.
But answer me true. Is that if he throws that up on 1st down in that phase of that part of the game, the game's over. if that gets picked.
Probably.
We're not-
No,
and we
I'm
don't feel-
sorry. We were at their 17. We're at their 17. It's 1st and 10. He retreated back to the 27.
If Kirk
evading a
Cousins
rush.
throws that pass and it gets picked, we're killing him. We're
Right.
killing him. But I mean, I'm not going to be hard on Taylor for that one. He got away. He got a little bit. He had a great game. He's scrappy, and I love everything about it. He also threw at least 3 balls that I wish he hadn't thrown.
Here's
That 2
sorry,
bounced
not
off
to,
of
one
their
quick
hand.
point on this play. I would almost guarantee you that if McLaurin doesn't make that catch, the flag comes out.
Why? Like a delayed flag?
I bet you that if McLaurin can't get back to that ball and make that catch, then the flag comes out as pass interference. But because he made the play, he might have been interfered with, but they didn't pull it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the ref would love to hear you say that. I can't say that's, that can be true.
I'm
You might
hopeful.
be right.
I've been a Washington fan long enough to know that that's probably
I think your
completely
point's
false.
well taken, Mark. I mean, I don't think anyone could argue at that point that throwing it up for grabs. I mean, there's a reason they call it a 50-50 ball. It's not, and I doubt, I'm sure he heard about that from the coaches but good job.
Did you guys
Right.
see the overhead of that play stills that were on Twitter?
Hmm.
McLaurin was so stupid wide open to begin that play. It wasn't even funny. But because Heinicke had to evade the rush, he got compressed down into the back of the end zone. If Heinicke's able to take about a 5-step drop, plant and throw, McLaurin could have walked into the end zone backwards.
So
I
we're
didn't see the stills of that, but I did see the stills of Urban Meyer, but I guess we'll talk about that another time.
so we have a lot of these what ifs when it comes to Heinicke. There was some missed throws. Mark, you were mentioning that he got away with a lot in that game. Like you said, there were 3 plays that Atlanta could have had interceptions and ultimately completely changed the course of the game. But the most refreshing thing for me is the fact that the guy once again showed that it factor. With the game on the line, he did it against New York. He did it against Atlanta. You just feel like if it comes down to the last 3 or 4 minutes and we have a chance to win the game, he just might do it for you. And some of the other quarterbacks that we've had, you haven't really had that sense a lot of times. So I suppose you take the good with the bad when it comes to this kid, because I mean, that it factor is something that a lot of guys don't have. He's just calm, cool, and collected in the heat of the moment. And I love that.
Arguably, he's at his best when it's the hottest out there. And that I appreciate that a lot. And I keep reminding myself that he's basically just a kid. He's a rookie in terms of game experience. So parts that scare me and the bad passes and some of the late reads, you'd expect that from a guy making his 5th start. And I'm very aware of that. I think we're lucky to have the kid. However it all turns out right now, I'm really glad he's our quarterback.
Yeah, so he threw 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, which we haven't had happen in a year. He's throwing for 70% completion rate so far this year, and his passer rating last Sunday was 127, which is the best passer rating since Cousins against the Saints in 2017. And he's on pace to break some of Jergensen's records. Now that's a lot to say, given that you don't know what's going to happen as we enter the death run here on our schedule. But I mean, the guy's, he's definitely making some mistakes, but I'll take him any day over the quarterbacks we've had
You
here.
could argue he's the reason that we're 2-2, that we're not 0-4.
Absolutely. I think without him, we're 1-3 or 0-4.
Agreed.
Watching him and watching some of the mistakes, and I get everybody's concern. Hey, Atlanta could have had 3 picks if they had their hands on right. But having watched this man's game now for what amounts to 46, 47 years, the greatest, and I'm not saying that Heinicke is going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play, even for Washington, much less in the league, right? Don't take it that way, but the great ones all have this bizarre luck There's just a certain, and it kind of goes hand in hand with Paul's it factor, right? And that bizarre luck just seems to be that other guys drop balls that the other team drops balls that they would normally catch, and things happen around them that I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And sometimes it feels a little bit like that with Heinicke, where he gets away with some things just because of natural luck. I can't explain it any other way. And it's not really tied to the it factor. That's something else where he goes out and does his thing and has this magic. But it's that I totally threw a lousy ball. It went absolutely the wrong place. It hit an opposing guy in the numbers, and he dropped it. And you can't explain it, but I'm seeing it week in and week out now in the highlights. So
I love that take. I was thinking about that watching Aaron Rodgers. How many times has he thrown a 50-50 ball? His Hail Marys, somehow they find the hands of their guys. Rodgers throws into some places that you're like, oh my God, and then it's completed. Mahomes chucks it on the run, falling out of bounds, whips it across the field 30 yards, and there's Tyreek. Says, oh, here comes the ball, and he runs and finds it. So yeah, there is such a thing.
He's kind of the anti-Kirk Cousins to me, because Cousins had the opposite vibe. It's like he would throw for 350 yards, and then his one interception in the entire game would be like at the most crucial moment and cost us a game, and that's probably unfair to him because he had some good games for us. But the other thing about Heinicke, not to make this all about Heinicke, but this week he finally got back to doing what comes natural to him, which is judiciously taking off. He had 43 yards to Gibson's 63. He averaged 8.6 yards a carry. So, and he only did it a few times, but when he did it, it was, and he even slid early a couple times. I noticed.
He did. You could see it. He was a yard and a half short, but
and they're talking about that in New Orleans. New Orleans is looking at the tape and going, we have to account for this guy.
It was funny because mid-game, Rivera pulled Heinicke aside, and it was like it's a switch flipped. And it was, I don't remember exactly what the moment was, but we were talking about it in the chat as much as we could. And it's like Rivera grabbed him by the face mask and said, go win the damn football game. You know what I mean? And it was like, okay, well, here it goes. Because he was a different guy. He wasn't scared anymore. He didn't didn't seem like he had those jitters, So it was interesting, and I hope it continues. And I'd rather him slide a yard and a half short than a yard and a half late.
Oh, he's kicking himself for a couple of those where he went up short.
I don't care. They were on first down. Give me second and a half, a yard and a half every time. I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, with our offensive line and Gibson, I feel good about that. I'll take that play, especially if it keeps my quarterback from taking a hit.
Yeah.
So we didn't play I know we weren't playing a great team, but we actually played a decent game across the board.
Offensively.
Most categories we were outplayed the Falcons in. Really the only areas where they edged us out a little bit, they edged us out on time of possession and third down efficiency. And even though our red zone efficiency has been great in 2021, inexplicably, their red zone efficiency, I think they were 100% in that game. So obviously that we didn't match that, but in all the statistical categories, we actually had a better game than them. I think the unsung hero, other than Taylor Heinicke, I think our special teams. I know that's going to sound crazy when we have a kicker that missed 2 extra points, but if you look at our kickoffs, our coverage on punts and kickoffs, and of course when we're getting a special teams touchdown, I think our special teams are so much better this year. Setting aside, I know Hopkins is still an open book, and I heard Rivera taking some pretty tough questions about him. He actually talked a lot about Graham Gano and how he almost fired Graham Gano after going through like 4 kickers in Carolina. He was having a terrible year, and then the next year he went to the Pro Bowl, and you see what Graham Gano is doing now. So he kind of related, and now whether or not that's going to happen with Hopkins, I don't know. But he did do a pretty good job of justifying why he's not just firing the guy.
He's been listening to you on our podcast.
Well, he would have to put a guy named Blewett in if he fires him. So I think
I can't believe it. I can't believe he hired a guy named Blewett.
I think one of the
So-
big things that you mentioned, John, is that, yeah, we missed 2 field goals, but we had a kick return for a touchdown in the first time in how long?
To open the
Paul?
second half, I believe,
It
right?
was it literally made up for those 2 missed field goals.
Yes, it did.
Paul's got those numbers right off the top of his head. How long's it been?
I want to say that the last time we returned something on special teams for a touchdown was against the Lions.
Yep. And I can't remember his name. He was a
Brandon-
tiny little dude.
Brandon Banks.
Boom. That's
Oh
it.
yeah, Mighty
I think
Mouse,
that's-
right? Is that Mighty Mouse?
It was
Yeah.
Mighty Mine. It was a kickoff return in Detroit, Paul. You're 100% right.
Anytime
Oh.
you can tie Brian Mitchell for a return record, that's pretty damn good. That's a pretty good day. And I bet you it's not the last time he takes one to the house. I bet you it's not.
And yet another thing that Paul called just a week off, because you were calling for that a week ago in Buffalo.
What's that?
The
A
kickoff
return?
return. Weren't
Special
you,
teams
you were the one that
No,
you were
no,
the one
I
that
don't
said-
think so.
Oh,
I don't
I'm
think
gonna
so.
go back and watch the pod. I think you said something about that.
I think it might have been John. John's
Paul,
been on
between-
Carter all year.
Don't
Between
listen
you
to
and
me,
me,
man.
Paul, the right answer is, yeah, I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I did call that, and y'all can
Hey,
suck
We're
it.
gonna have to
That's what
change the
happened.
name of the podcast to Blind Squirrel if we're gonna start giving me credit for predictions.
So we were talking about, John, all the stats. I'm looking at the team stats for the game against the Falcons. You are right. We beat them in total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, average per play, all of that. The 1 point scored, we beat them in that one. Where we did not, again, was on third down efficiency. We are brutal in third down efficiency. I've got stats for later if we want to get into that.
We're
But in
giving
this
up
game-
we're giving up like 60%.
Yeah, they were 62 in this game. We were 44, which is actually up for us. That's one of the areas that we're really going to have to work on. Our third down efficiency right now, we are 31st in the league at 30.3%.
You've got to.
That's
get on
not
the
good.
field.
No, it's
There are
not.
32 teams in the league. 31st is not good.
No.
Hey, before we move off of the DeAndre Carter thing, I know we already did move off of it. We got to give Bates a shout out, man.
That was a hell of a
That
block, man.
pancake block, because basically that sprung the whole thing. And my only question is, when are we going to throw the ball at that guy?
Well,
Because
this
now
week-
would be a really good
this
time to
week-
start thinking about it.
It's
This
coming
week-
now.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me though. Why your starting tight end goes down and Ricky Seals Jones is the only tight end to get targets. I get he's the vet, probably the more sure-handed. He's probably got he's got more experience, obviously, but you've got Bates right there, man. Like, weapons are weapons. Let's use weapons.
Well, my question is, I mean, do we know how good Bates's hands are? Was he drafted as a blocking tight end? Because we
No.
obviously now know he is a blocking dude.
When we did our preseason pod, we talked about that. One of the things Rivera said when we drafted him was he didn't get a lot of balls thrown his way, but when he did, he caught them. They said he
Yeah.
has this catch radius and he just doesn't drop a ball. So that was part of their thinking.
My guess is we'll see some passes thrown his way this week.
He'll be on the field this week.
So
I hope
I,
you do.
I don't want to praise our coaches too much for fear of jinxing them. But in regards to the whole Logan Thomas thing, I know we talked a lot about Pete Honer in the past. And the guy's just been a wizard in terms of developing tight ends. He did it a year ago with Thomas, and now we're going to have Thomas out. I mean, he's going to be doing it on the fly in season, so his hands are going to be full, so to speak. But it's pretty refreshing knowing we got a guy like that, that can be in charge of hopefully developing a guy like Bates at maybe a little bit of a quicker pace than he normally would be. So I'm hoping that the void left by Thomas is not something that becomes too noticeable in his absence.
When we were talking about the draft, I said something that was wrong. I was talking about like Tamara Hemingway and I basically said everyone beyond Logan is a scrub on our tight end roster, but I think Ricky Seals Jones can actually play, and he's made a couple of bonehead plays here and there, but he's also made some big
That touchdown catch was a hell of a catch. That's
Yes,
not
it
just a
was.
normal catch.
So I'm not afraid of him playing more. I guess when we get to the next game, we need to talk about the guy we signed today a little bit, but because he's
Not
going to be
to
on.
not to break into this, but NBC Sports Washington just dropped something on Vermillion. It says he's been placed on administrative leave due to an ongoing criminal investigation unrelated to the team, and there's no indication of player involvement. There's suspicion he was writing bad prescriptions to people.
That's what I figured it was. I mean, there's not too many
Possible
things.
diversion of prescription drugs to people who did not have a legitimate reason to get them. So, not to go in another direction, but hopefully, and I have very, very little faith that this is actually going to happen. Hopefully, that's the last that we hear of it. He's on administrative leave. He ends up getting fired on a Friday afternoon news dump. The team decides to move on. I shouldn't say fired. The team and him decide to part ways, and that's the end of it.
So as long as we're on the Vermillion thing, did anybody see on Twitter this afternoon who was hanging out on the sideline at Redskin Park or Washington Football Park, whatever we're calling
Yeah,
it now?
Bubba Tire, right?
Bubba Tire back in the house. Yeah, apparently Vermillion did so much for the team that it's going to take more than one guy to kind of fill his shoes. And the first phone call they made was Bubba Tire, and he
They
answered.
said he was volunteering. I'm like, hell with that, man. I want cash.
Standing right
Bubba
next
Tire.
to Norv Turner, by the way.
We're putting the band back together.
I'm telling you, yeah.
What's that movie where the guy dies but no one notices and they carry him around?
Weekend at Bernie's.
Not that I'm wishing Mr. Tire any ill will by any means, but may he live a long life. But it kind of made me think of that for some reason.
It worked for the Rolling Stones. I think Keith Richards been dead for like 25 years.
I think I did see on Twitter, though, that if he was giving steroids to the team, it sure as hell didn't help. Anyways, on to last couple closing things that we can bounce around a little bit on this before we move on to
On the Falcons.
On the Falcons. JD McKissick probably has the play of the year to this point. Outside of, that one and Seals Jones catch for the touchdown.
He went Heinicke on us, man.
You could argue, I guess. Hold on.
With altitude.
Let me bring up another point here that's just crossing my mind. How many big plays have we had this season that we have not seen in the past? The screen pass to Gibson, that play to McKissick, the big play to Seals Jones, the dime that and I hate when people use the word dime. Just the perfect pass to McLaurin for the first touchdown in this game. When was the last time we were consistently hitting plays of 20 plus yards?
Well, you know what the secret is here. We finally have a good offensive coordinator calling. I
know that was well played, Mark. I actually saw some people this week on Twitter talking about how maybe we were too quick to throw Scott Turner into the trash heap of history.
My frustration with Turner has never been his play scheme. It's been the design and how things are played. Because I have a bitch, and I'm going to use the word bitch about Scott Turner. Why is Logan Thomas on punt coverage blowing his hamstring up? This is what blows me away about our coordinators.
Well, that's not Scott Turner's fault.
Oh, you bet. If I'm Scott Turner, I'm on the table. You're not putting him on punt coverage. Fire me. Get him off of punt coverage. That's my starting tight end. Behind him, we have a bunch of us, as far as anybody's concerned.
Except maybe we don't. Maybe these guys are seeing things in practice that don't have them quite that worried.
Then put Ricky Seals Jones on punt coverage, not Logan freaking Thomas.
All right, I'm going to do a survey of how many starting tight ends are playing on special teams in the NFL. I bet you it's more than one.
That's fine. It can be more than one. They don't all play. They're not our strongest. He's our number 2 offensive weapon. You could argue.
I'd like to point out that Sean Taylor pretty much demanded to play special teams. He was the first guy in line, and you could argue that he was our number 1 weapon on defense.
It's a different game. And the sad thing is that was 20 years ago. It's scary to think about it that way.
The sad part of it was almost 20 years ago.
I'm going to make a demand. So after the offense scores 2 touchdowns, has to come from behind, when the damn near rookie quarterback looks like Joe Montana for the most part, let's wait till next week to bash on Turner because we bashed the hell out of
I'm
him.
not bashing. No, I'm not.
So
Bashing.
let's just give him a little bit of
He
slack.
called a good game. I liked a lot of it. I loved it. I liked a lot of what he did, and I have to this point. I've liked a lot of what he did. I said when we played against the Giants, we had 3 brilliant drives. We just had 3 terrible ones. It's there.
I still feel like I would like to see us run the ball a little bit more than we are. I feel like maybe we're still a little on the pass happy side. But yeah, you can't argue with the outcome, can you?
So one thing that we haven't talked about, and I find this really interesting, this is a game where I thought our defense again basically was on their heels most of the game. We made a few plays and a couple of key stops, but by and large, I mean, my predictions for last week, and I've got my little Falcons review notes. I was right about 3 things. 1, we won. 2, that if we didn't get pressure on Matt Ryan and make him uncomfortable, he was going to go off, and he could still hurt us. He did. And that Cordell Patterson was the one guy who scared me on that offense, and he blew up. What I was wrong about was I predicted this would be the week that our defense would look like starting to come together. And if it is, it's glacial in pace, and that scares me. We won the game because Taylor Heinicke went Joe Montana late in the game, and McLaurin did McLaurin, and we got a couple of breaks. But
yeah,
if we're having to score 34 every week to win games, it's going to be a tough gig.
It is. We did get a sack. Montez got a sack. We got Cole Holcomb played his ass off.
You did?
He had 9 tackles, a tackle for a loss, and forced a fumble. I don't think we recovered the fumble, but he forced a fumble. So he was playing out of his mind. And John Allen,
that was that terrible play where like they didn't blow the whistle until after the fumble, and then they claimed forward progress had been stopped.
Yeah,
because he picked that ball up and returned it damn near for a touchdown.
John Allen is playing out of his mind this year. He's like, to me, he's the MVP of certainly of the defense so far this year. But yeah, we didn't get a lot of pressure, and I thought they mixed it up a little bit more than they have, as far as it just wasn't 4 guys rushing constantly. We still didn't get home very often or much at all, and I thought the defensive backs, it makes me really nervous. And I think we missed St. Just quite a bit out there. I hope he's back this Sunday, because I think we miss him when he's not in there.
I think one of the most concerning things with this defense, and at the same time, one of the things that I think could help this defense get a little bit of their swagger back, is if they start creating some turnovers. I was doing a little bit of reading today, and you probably don't want to hear this number, but you're not going to be surprised by it. We're giving up 417 yards per game defensively, 4th worst in the NFL. Now, I want to share this as well, though. The interesting thing about that is that a quarter into the season, roughly, you got teams like Seattle, Kansas City, the Rams, and the Cowboys as well, who are in the bottom 7 of the league in yards given up per game. But nobody's talking about a sky is falling scenario with those teams. The thing with those teams is they create turnovers. Dallas has 10 takeaways on the year. Seattle has 4. The Rams have 4. We got 1. If we can get a few turnovers, I really think this defense can start to get a little bit of their mojo back, and it just gives your team a little bit of a different feel. It gives them a little bit of a different energy, and it's amazing what, a player or 2 here or there can do to change a team's fortunes. We really need that.
Well, and here's the other thing to think about. You said we're giving up 417 yards a game, right? Let's say we make an interception, and one of those drives that goes for 87 only goes for 14 in every game. Now you're talking about a team that's only given up 325 to 340 yards a game.
Well, and they also get to go sit down and drink Gatorade for a few minutes. I mean, that's the other thing, is when you're giving up these drive after drive after drive, those guys are, they're going to be gassed, and we just can't have that.
We had 2 turnovers that got turned into dumb plays. One was the one that we just talked about with Holcomb. The other one was one of the most egregious and dumbest penalties I've ever seen called, is roughing the passer. Yeah. It's equally, first off, the refs, that's the stupidest play I've ever seen in my life. How is that a penalty? But I'm going to point more fingers at Chase Young, because I can't control the refs. Here's what I can control. You have a clean shot at a quarterback who's standing there with the ball in his hand, and you run up and punch him in his shoulder. If you're afraid of taking a penalty, bear hug him. Hold on to him so the ball can't come
Just
out until they
tackle
blow
him.
the
People
whistle.
are like, oh, he would have got a penalty. You don't get a penalty for tackling the quarterback. You just stay away from his head and don't body slam.
And don't land on him. Yeah.
And I'm probably the only Washington fan in America that when I watched the replay thought, yeah, that's a penalty. Based on the rule, I know some people are like, well, I zoomed it up 10
The
times.
rule
and
is
he hit
the dumb
shoulder.
part. I'm not talking about the call. The rule is dumb. Did he make a glancing? He hit him in the shoulder, and his hand probably made contact with his helmet in some fashion. So yes, by the rule. And guess
I
what?
agree. Just tackle him. Put your arms around his waist. And
Going 58 and a 55 is technically speeding too. And if they want to charge
Yes.
you, then it's still speeding. Speeding is
and
speeding.
raising the forearm to the quarterback is never a good idea. Not in 2021.
The
Whether you hit him
optics
or
are
not.
terrible.
Yeah.
So what?
So as much as the refs are to blame, Chase Young has to be better than that. He has to be. That's your first sack of the season. It's right there on a platter.
I thought he was trying to make a play on the ball. When I watched that play a couple of times, I thought he was trying to knock the ball out of Brian's hands and make the big game-changing play, which I'm not crazy about in that situation either. I'd rather see him just wrap up and hold the guy in a bear hug. But I think that's Chase trying to make a play. And I don't think, anyway, that's what I saw when I watched it. And I wasn't quite as mad at him as some people I've heard. But
that play, when I saw the penalty, I was like, that's going to cost us the game. It just had that feeling to it.
It could have.
But they didn't. But in years past, we haven't had Taylor Heinicke.
Well, and talking about Chase, so I watched the highlights through 3 times on Sunday after the NFL posted them, and I paid a little bit of attention to the guys rushing the passer, and then I sat on my couch Monday night, and I watched another Ohio State product, Joey Bosa. Chase Young needs to spend some time working on his hands. He's not any smaller. He's not any less talented than Joey Bosa. I'll tell you what Joey Bosa's got that Chase Young doesn't. His hands are in constant motion. And nobody ever gets a hold of that jersey. Nobody ever gets a clean punch on him. Nobody ever gets their hands set because he's constantly slapping and swiping and moving, and Chase has no hand game, none. And guys are getting up into his jersey and just standing him up on that bull rush. He needs to go to the Joey Bosa school of hand fighting because it ain't going to work otherwise.
No, I think that's a fair observation. And I think that echoes something the Rivera was talking about that last week. Young man, you need to break off the upfield and spin inside because he's got a technique issue right now. It's not an effort issue and it's not a talent issue. It's technique. And we're going to find out the rest of this year and next year what he really is. He's got the talent to be as good as there's ever been. Whether or not he puts in the work and learns his craft, we're going to find out.
One trick pony at the moment. And I'm not sure Sweat's much better, to be completely honest with you. They may be 2 of the best bull rushing, guys in the league, but if that's all you can do, other teams figure out how to neutralize that.
All right, guys, let's talk about the Saints.
Yeah, because we've been at this a minute.
I have a good segue. This is not the week to stop criticizing Scott Turner for not running the ball because the Falcons play the run. That's what they do. I mean, the Saints play the run. Their defensive coordinator is Dennis Allen. He's in his 6th year there. The last 3 years, that team has been in the top 3 against the run. That's what they do. I went and watched their game against the Giants earlier today, the condensed version. There's going to be 8 men in the box, and they are run blitzing when they're not pass blitzing. We are not going to be running the ball 30 times this week unless we get a big lead. This is going to be a Taylor Heinicke game because
They're second in the league right now in yards, rushing yards. So they're legit.
They shut down the run. They do.
Oh.
We're not. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, sorry. Mark, I totally agree with you. This has to be a day that, we rely on Heinicke in probably a more heavy fashion than we would like. Now, the caveat in regards to that is the Saints have 7 interceptions on the year. They're +5 in the turnover differential department. And if Taylor's throwing balls up for grabs, like we saw on a few instances against the Falcons, making some ill-advised throws, I'm not sure that he comes away with the good fortune that he had a week ago. So a little bit of a balancing act there, I suppose.
So they're a Jekyll and Hyde team. They crushed Green Bay at home the first week. Then they played god awful and lost to the Panthers. Then they beat the Panthers in New England. Then they played badly and lost to the Giants in overtime last time. So the bad news is we're catching them on the win cycle. But I wonder if one advantage we have is we can show run and pass. Like we probably better than any other team in the league. We have running backs who are really hybrid wide receivers. So what I would like to see them do a lot of is show run and pass out of the backfield. Because I don't think just abdicating the run entirely is gonna. I mean, they might stack 8 in the box until they figure out that we can't run against them, but they're not going to do that for the whole game if we're not rushing the ball. So I hope they don't not try to rush at all. They did give up some big rushes against the Giants. Saquon Barkley banged off a couple of long runs, so it's not that they're impervious to it. They're just really damn good against the run. So
what was the best way to beat an 8-man box is get your running back to make one guy miss, and then there's a lot of open field.
Well, that or play action, because they're going to, if they're playing the run that tight, these guys are biting on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're disciplined. They stay in their gaps. They do all the things that we haven't been doing yet this year. They play good, sound defense. They got fast athletes, and they focus on stopping the run first. I did see a lot of holes in their secondary. We know who Daniel Jones is. He had himself a pretty good game and found guys running open. Taylor's going to have to find the guys and hit them.
They are 91.7% in the red zone. We're good in the red zone. I think we're like 73% in the red zone. But when they get in the red zone, they score touchdowns. So that's really what we have to be concerned about. Is not, we can let them.
Did you see the tackling that they had on Taysom Hill last week on that one run? I think he broke a tackle against every player on the Giants defense.
He beat 5 guys on that one touchdown run.
Yeah, so.
We are going to see some Tyson to some Hill gadget plays. I was thinking, if I'm Sean Payton and I'm looking at our defensive film, I think I'm kind of looking forward to this game, right? We can be suckered. We're kind of reactionary. I think we're going to see gadget plays. I think we're going to see Taysom Hill running the Wildcat. I think he's going to get a dozen chances to throw it, to run it, and they're going to try to keep us guessing. Be a good week for us to show up on defense.
So the flip side of it is I looked at the play mix for both teams. The Saints have rushed it for 133 times, have passed it 90 times so far in 2021. We're the direct reverse of that. We've thrown it 124 times. We've rushed it 102. So they're going to try to rush it down our throats. So
just curious, how many of those rushes are Taysom Hill?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because Alvin Kamara is every bit as dangerous.
Because every rush that Hill gets, Kamara doesn't. That's my.
I guess where I'm going with that is I think it's more important. We're not going to totally stop. It's more important that we stop their run than they stop ours, I guess is what I would say.
I can buy that.
Yeah.
How much of that Jekyll and Hyde act in New Orleans is tied directly to Winston?
Winston has almost identical numbers to Taylor Heinicke, except he's got about double the sacks. Other than that, they're literally almost within a couple of points of each other in every category. So I don't know. I haven't watched all their games, so I don't know whether in the weeks 2 and weeks 4 he played a lot worse. But overall he's played pretty well.
Funny you should say that. I pulled up his stats, his 4 games, and this is what jumped out at me. He has attempted against Green Bay. He attempted 20 passes. Against Carolina in week 2, he threw 22. In week 3 up in New England, he threw 21. And against New York, he threw 23. He's thrown between 20 and 23 passes only in each of those games.
That almost
the-
sounds like they've got him on a pitch count.
They've got him on a pitch count. They're trying to limit his Jameis Winston-ness where he's
Yeah,
gonna.
because the same guy
Well, they
that
got
throws
Alvin
for
Kamara
30
and-
touchdowns and 30 interceptions. They're trying to find the plays that result in touchdowns.
And they've got Alvin Kamara, who
Right.
scares the hell out of me this week. I think he's going to get 25 carries, and he's going to get the ball thrown to him another 6 or 7 times.
I've
We
got
do.
it all taken care of, Mark. Kamara
Oh.
starting for me in fantasy football. He's not doing anything this Sunday.
So that's my number one key to a win, is to force Winston to throw more than they want to. That's my number one.
100%. Throw it down the field. Don't let him get comfortable dumping it to Kamara, getting it to his playmakers in space.
We can't let him we can't let him go to his second and third read. Or we have to force him to go to his second and third read. It's to me, it's Matt Ryan all over again. If he can throw on rhythm without somebody by his feet, making him think he's a big time NFL quarterback with a big arm. If you can move him around and he's terribly inaccurate on the run. That's all I kept seeing over and over watching him today. Remember Jason Campbell, everything looked pretty good until something's broke down and he had to start moving. That's what Winston looks like to me. We have got to get in his face and get him off his mark.
Here's something to look at. I'm looking at Kamara's stats right now. He's not exactly blowing the doors off of anybody. Against the Packers, 20 carries for 83 yards. That's four and some change. Against the Panthers, he went 8 carries for 5 yards.
Well, yeah, but that's Carolina, and they're playing some of the best run D in the league at the moment.
Against New England, 24 carries for 89. Against the Giants, he was better. He had 26 carries for $120. He averaged just over 4.5 yards a carry, but he had no catches in that game.
4.5 yards a carry. That would be bad against us. If we can't hold him under 4.5 yards a carry, it's going to be a long night.
But
He's also the thing
zero
about Kamara
catches.
is he's one of the top tackle breakers of the running backs in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
That's his thing, is if you don't get him with that first hit, he can break 2 or 3 tackles.
Yep.
And that's what we can't have happen.
He's got that like LaShawn McCoy feel, where if you don't get him on the first one and you let him get ahead of steam and be able to manipulate you with his hips, he's gonna beat you. But here's the other thing, and I don't understand how in the world a guy like Kamara has 10 catches on the season. I guess it's the same thing with like Gibson. Like, why is that guy not a focal point in your offense? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if maybe Winston's not comfortable with him. Like, I think, Mark, I think you're right. We've got to pay attention to him, because if he finds a way to touch the ball 30 times, 8 targets, 9 targets out of the backfield, if we let that happen, maybe teams are looking at him and saying, you're not going to beat us with him unless you hand it off. And even if you do that, we're going to try to limit that.
All I know is if I'm scheming against our defense and I've got Sean Payton, I've got those weapons, I know who I'm featuring. I'm going to feed you Kamara until you stop him.
Right.
And that's
And
ground, air.
it's in the pass game and the run game.
And they will, by the way, they will take their shots downfield. They did that multiple times against the Giants. They go play action, and Jameis is not shy about chucking it downfield. They've got some guys. We can't afford to have blown coverages and some receiver running 20 yards uncovered again.
Well, I
this
mean,
week.
we're good for about 2 or 3 of them a game.
I know it. We need to.
So I think another big factor is we finally, the injury bugs finally hit us, and we know about the guys that went to IR. But today's injury list, just on offense, Diami Brown did not practice. Antonio Gibson did not practice. Curtis Samuel did not practice. Let's see, Cam Sims did not practice. J.D. McKissick was limited. And so I think I'm
McKissick's a rest day.
I'm hoping that a lot of those guys are just saying, we're going to give them an extra day or 2 to heal up and pull them in late in the week. I'm hoping, because especially Curtis Samuel, because I think you could see a difference, even though you could kind of tell he still isn't 100%, but he made 3 or 4 catches in critical places that kept drives going. That I think is underrated his performance. When to me, I was surprised he was even active. And then he contributed big time, maybe not with yards, but in the catches that he made were must-have catches. So,
And first
I-
downs.
and then I don't think it's any accident that McLaurin had a career, almost had a career day. So I really hope that they're just being protective of him and that he can play, because having him out there, I don't know who else we have. Maybe Brown on a good day is a legitimate threat, but I think we need that legitimate second wide receiver to take the pressure off McLaurin a little bit.
I think this is the time of year where every team starts protecting some players. I looked at the Saints, their left tackle and center are both listed as questionable for this weekend. I'd really like to see us take advantage, if that's the case, and they're down a couple of bodies, to just start generating some heat.
So they fired their
know if-
kicker this week too. I don't know if you knew that. Rosas, who I don't think had been there long, but he missed a 58-yarder.
Hmm.
They fired him. So they've got Corey Parkey, I think. Cody Parkey.
Cody Parkey.
I
Oh,
heard
you
he
remember Cody
missed
Parkey? You remember where he made his claim to fame, right? Didn't he doink all three sides of the goalpost when he was playing for Chicago, left, right, and middle?
Is that
Yeah.
that guy? That's
I
pretty
think
good
that's
memory,
that guy.
brother.
He's
That's good
played
memory,
for
my
5
friend.
NFL teams. I was looking at him before we came on tonight. He's made almost 85% of his kicks, but he's terrible between 40 and 49. He's almost missed half his kicks in that range. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I know we're worried about our kicker, but it's got to be pretty tough to come in off the street like that and
On the road.
Yeah.
They let go of a guy for missing a 58-yarder.
I don't know if that's why they let go of him, because honestly, I don't know how he's played this
There'd be
year.
a lot of unemployed.
I don't think it was coincidental.
Everybody but the guy playing for Baltimore would be unemployed at this
Right.
point.
How about that? 66 yards. 66 yards.
NFL record. Had no reason to make that, and it went exactly 66 yards.
It
And
did.
it bounced straight up and it flipped right over.
That was insane. Insane. Hey, we're
You
living
know-
through history, my friends.
You know, the only reason that went in was because they played the Lions, right?
Yeah.
Any other
100%.
franchise, it's a miss.
Well, and the play before, did you see the play before? It was on 0-0 for a second. And they didn't throw the flag for the delay of game.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be
He's
worse.
not
could
making
be
it
the
from
Lions.
71, I promise. All right, so as we wrap this thing up, what do we think is going to happen? I'm not going to write it down this time because I don't have anything to write with.
I'll
wanna
start
go
it out
down?
because I usually bring
John,
up.
go ahead. Your top
Caleb,
line.
Charlie. So I hate to say it, but this one feels like a game that we lose to me, and I'll tell you why. Although we have a winning record against the Saints, historically, we're pretty good winning record against them. And we're actually, let's see, I wrote it down somewhere. At home, we're 8-5 against them since 1967. But we haven't played them at home at FedEx since 2015. So we play them better at home than we do on the road. But I just feel
Hold
like
on. 2015 was that blowout game, wasn't it? The random, hey, we're a terrible team, but we just beat the Saints like 37-10.
yeah, I think so.
Was that game?
Yep.
So I just feel like we're pretty evenly matched with them. I worry that Winston, because Winston hasn't really had a game where he, like the good Jameis Winston games that we've seen in the past.
Yes, he has. Hold on, timeout. Look at what he did week one. Week 1, 14 of 20, 148 yards and 5 touchdowns.
I don't
5
know.
of his 8 touchdowns came in week 1.
The Packers mail that one in, my friend.
Sorry,
That
not
was
to-
an anomaly game, but the
not
point
to
is not
derail
lost.
you, John. I apologize. I completely.
No, it's
just
fine.
blanked on
I just said I think the key is that we got to stop the run. I think we can limit the run. I think we have a pretty good run defense overall. I mean, certainly better than our passing defense. So I think we can keep Kamara from absolutely single-handedly killing us. I worry about 2 things: our pass rush still and our defensive backs, because I've been given no reason not to be terrified of those 2 things. So, and I don't think that bodes well with Hill and Winston. I just worry that they're going to unleash on us. And let's face it, we have no home field advantage whatsoever. I guarantee you there will be as many Saints fans in that stadium. It's also supposed to rain Saturday, which I don't think if it's going to be, if we're required to have a shootout through the air to beat them, it doesn't bode well for that. So it could be a sloppy game, and I think that favors them, but I hope I'm wrong. I usually am. So that's the good news.
And
I
sorry,
figure it's a 24-21, we lose.
24-20. All right. And sorry to derail this, but again, can I just say a shout out to the Atlanta Falcons for having a dome with a retractable stadium and keeping it open while it rained?
I loved it. This is a
Thank
great
you for
country or
that.
what?
24-21. All right. What do you got, Bob?
Oh, golly. I actually feel relatively, I don't want to say good, optimistic. How about that? Relatively optimistic about this game for a number of the reasons that John just pegged as things he's not keen on. We are playing at home, and New Orleans hasn't always been the greatest road team. They kind of like that whole dome thing, and we're not in a dome, and the weather isn't supposed to be great this weekend in DC, which, I think kind of favors the team that's used to playing out in it. If anybody's used to playing out in it at this point in time. But again, we're playing nail biters. We're playing nail biters, except for getting blown out in Buffalo. We're playing nail biters. So I really don't feel like this is going to be, anything comfortable, and it could go either way in the end. I'm going to be ridiculously optimistic and say we win this 28-24.
28. Okay.
Are you keeping track over there?
24-21 and 28-24. Win and loss. I told you I'm not writing it down, so I probably should because I ain't going to remember. Hold on.
I'm
All right,
writing
go
it
ahead,
down.
Mark.
I got it. I'll send it to you, Derek.
All right, Mark. What do you got?
So I can't pick winners and losers in Survivor to save my life. I can't pick in Survivor. I'm down to one life already. In the pick'em, I get about 50%. I'm rarely wrong on the Washington team, and I've been right 4 weeks in a row, and I'm afraid I'm going to be right again, and you're not going to like it. Until I see our defense show up. We've been saying it this is going into week 5. Until I see our defense show up, we're going to have to outscore teams week after week after week. Maybe Tyler does it again. Maybe Taylor Heinicke does. Maybe he doesn't. The Saints team, Peyton, they always show up and play hard. I don't know that our guys haven't looked in spurts. They look like they're really after it. And other times they just kind of look like they're reacting and not turning in 100%. I cannot figure out what's happened to our defense. You don't go from second in the league to 31st overall, which we are right now, I believe, or 29th. It's down there. Something is rotten there in the state of Washington, and we can't figure out. They've got to get it figured out, and it's tough to do that on the fly. Our turnover rate, I think we touched on that a little while ago. We are -3. They're +7. We are the 7th most penalized team in the NFL right now. And the third down conversion thing, we're converting at less than a third. And if we can get them off the field on third down a few times, I think we win the game. Until I see us do it, I can't predict that we are. So if I have to make a prediction, I'm saying the Saints win this in one of those. It's going to be a nail biter, heartbreaker game. And I got them 31-27. And I really want to break the streak of being right on Washington.
All
Calling a
right.
flag on myself for not having enough positive vibes.
All right, Paul, what do you got, buddy?
Crap, he brought.
By the way,
All right.
hold on. It's not lost on me that I see the flag behind you. The
Oh yeah,
flag making its first appearance on the podcast, correct?
no, it was up on a couple previous ones, but because I was on a phone, you probably couldn't see it. I'm on a computer now.
Oh,
better
there.
view.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's horizontal, not vertical.
That's true. It just, you're right. Now that you mention that.
Yeah.
Quit drinking.
So,
No. What do you got, Paul?
okay. keep in mind, I'm 1-3 on these predictions so far this year. So, put no merit in what I am saying. But I'm going to push all my chips to the middle of the table this week, Jim Fossil style. And there's a few things from that last game that left me optimistic.
Good.
The offense had a couple big scores at the end of the game to have an amazing comeback. And one thing that people overlook is when we made it 30-28 after that McLaurin touchdown, I didn't think that we had hope. I thought, well, Atlanta's going to get the ball, drive down the field, score again, and that's going to be it. But the defense probably made their most important stop of the season in that moment. They turned out a 3-and-out. We gave Heinicke the ball back. We go down, we score. So I think we're going to ride the wave of that energy from those last 8 or 9 minutes. And I think we're going to use that as a rallying point this week against New Orleans. There's one thing I know about New Orleans, Washington. It's that when these two teams play, there is a ton of points being scored. I looked at our last 11 matchups against New Orleans, and there have been 6 times in those 11 games where we've gone over 30 points, and there's been 5 times where they've gone over 30 points themselves. So it's usually a shootout when these two teams play each other. I think we're going to see a lot of points being scored again this week. And I think we're going to get that critical defensive turnover that we've been talking about. I think we're going to get a tipped ball at the line of scrimmage that a linebacker of all people in positions returns for a touchdown for us, and we're going to win 32-23.
Welcome to
32.
Washington, Jamin Davis.
Yes.
What was that? What was that score again?
32-23.
Yeah.
Well, from your lips to the big guy's ears, my friend.
So you were talking about the history. Looking and thinking about that, this matchup that we've had with New Orleans has produced some of the craziest games I've ever experienced. Craziest plays I've ever experienced. Griffin to Pierre Garcon, the coming out party. Like that was when it started, was against the Saints in New Orleans. Robert Meacham. If you guys remember that play, it made every Washington fan want to throw themselves against a wall, where we had the interception returning it. He runs up from behind, grabs the ball out of the guy's hands, and returns it for a touchdown. This has been a very strange matchup. And obviously, to be honest, none of the ones from before actually matter towards this one, but I think we kind of see the same kind of thing. The eternal optimist in me believes that this is kind of one of those games where the ball bounces in our favor. Couple early turnovers or a couple early big plays, and we find ourselves out to a double-digit early lead, 10-0, 14-3. I don't know why. I can't even justify it. I can't explain it.
I think
we
your comment about the early lead is really a big deal, because what we can't afford to do is get down and then they just pound us with Kamara for 3 quarters and Hill. So
Right.
I don't think this is another game where we can't just go down 10-0 or 14-0 again.
And conversely, if we can get out to an early lead, we can take that Kamara element out of the game, at least the running element out of the game. We're talking about a completely different scenario. The optimist in me thinks we win this thing kind of handily, but the realist in me knows this team well enough that I can't put my money on that. So I'm going to say we eke this one out. 28-25, some weird secondary score. Washington wins. Maybe New Orleans goes for 2. They score a touchdown to get to 23. They go for 2 and get it. It gets interesting. Onside kick, they don't recover it, kind of thing.
I'll take any of those scenarios.
Bonus question is, how many extra points did we miss?
Oh my gosh.
He doesn't miss this week. He doesn't miss this week. He'll be good this week. but I hope it doesn't come down to a 49-yarder in the rain with Dustin to win the game.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, so the predictions are in, boys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for everything. It's been
All right,
fun.
guys.
Hail, everybody.
That's right.